everyone. Today we're going to explore another fascinating verse from the book of Jeremiah in the Old Testament about eating. Before we do that, I thought I would just share with you quickly how I started doing this crazy thing of interpreting ancient scripture through a lens of biology. I actually have a list in my phone of things I can't believe I'm doing, and this is on it. I was reading this book, The Yoga of Jesus by Paramahansa Yogananda, the author of Autobiography of a Yogi. Later, I was on holiday in New Zealand when a hotel Bible called out to me, asked me to pick it up and study it for a moment. From an intense moment of sudden realization and following that little rabbit hole that opened up, I landed in the book of Jeremiah. Let's dive in now with Jeremiah 2:3. The verse says, Israel was holiness to Yahweh, the first of his increase. All who devour him shall be held guilty. Evil shall come upon them, says Yahweh. At first glance, this sounds like a spiritual statement about Israel's sacredness, but let's unpack it as a vivid metaphor for what happens in your mouth when you take a bite of food. Trust me, it's going to make eating feel like a sacred act. Picture this, you pop a bite of food into your mouth, maybe a juicy apple or a warm piece of bread. Instantly, your body springs to life like a well-orchestrated symphony. Let's break down the verse using our diagram to see how it maps onto the biology of eating. First, Israel in the verse, in ancient Hebrew, means to contend, and here I feel it represents the sensory receptors associated with this action, such as taste, smell, and others. These tiny sensors detect the food's flavour, smell, texture, and so forth. What they contend with is what you've put in your mouth. They're like gatekeepers kicking off the whole process. Now, the verse says Israel was holiness to Yahweh. Holiness in Hebrew means set apart, something special and distinct. What happens next is described as his increase. This is referring to the food when it hits your tongue. Increase comes from a Hebrew word for produce or crops. So it's the food itself, the raw material your body works with. The verse says, all who devour him shall be held guilty. Devour comes from a Hebrew root meaning to eat or consume for benefit, and that's exactly what chewing does. Your teeth break down the food, and this devouring is the first step in digestion. The verse then says, those who devour are held guilty, which in Hebrew means condemned or devoted to destruction. Sounds intense, right? But biologically, it's spot on. The food is condemned to be broken down into smaller pieces for digestion, and here's where it gets juicy, literally. The verse ends with, evil shall come upon them, says Yahweh. In Hebrew, evil can mean a destructive force. In our metaphor, I feel that this is the salivary juices, specifically the salivary enzymes, flooding your mouth. When the hypothalamus gets the signal from your nose and mouth, it cues these glands to release enzymes that, along with your teeth, break the food into a slippery mass prepared for digestion. Diagram. You take a bite of food, the increase hits your sensory receptors or Israel. These signal the hypothalamus, Yahweh, through a holy or set-apart pathway via the brainstem. Chewing, the devouring, breaks down the food, making it guilty or condemned. Then the salivary enzymes, the evil, finish the job, preparing the food for digestion. What I love about this verse is how it's not just food, it's like a divine interplay of biology. Next time you eat, think about this. Your taste buds, nose, brain, and saliva are working together in a way that echoes ancient wisdom. Pretty amazing, hey? That's our journey through Jeremiah 2:3 and the biology of eating. I hope this makes sense, and I hope you see your meal in a new light. Thanks for joining me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and questions. For now, I think I'm going to have one of these.